This afternoon, national anger at how top politicians and many considered to be affluent won scholarships from the GetFund to attend schools abroad. The Auditor General believes this is an aberration of the law, as he argues, per the mandate of GetFund, funding must be for education within the boundaries of Ghana. But majority of the beneficiaries captured in the Auditor General's report took the scholarship for studies abroad. Mr. Opoku Prempeh, Deputy Majority Leader Joa Safo, and Executive Secretary of the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment, Prince Sama, are among the politicians, academicians, members of parliament, and media personnel included in a list of beneficiaries posted. The revelation has spawned several reactions. We'll hear from the minister shortly. I'm talking about the Minister for Education. But first, here are details of their performance audit report conducted between July 2017 and March 2019, covering the period of 2012 to 2018.
According to GetFund's annual report from 2012 to 2018, the Secretariat spent in excess of 400 million cedis on scholarships on 3,112 beneficiaries, out of which 2,217 persons were unlawfully granted scholarships to study abroad. The Auditor General's report found that the GetFund Secretariat breached the law by administering the foreign scholarships, which is the mandate of the Scholarship Secretariat. Some of the beneficiaries, according to the report, include a person bearing the name of the Education Minister, Matthew Opoku Prempeh, who studied at Harvard University for an international security course valued at $11,200. Another person who bears a name similar to Deputy Majority Leader Sarah Adwasafo is also listed as having attended a conference at Harvard and benefited from a $12,000 allowance. The report highlights the huge amount of money spent on foreign scholarships could have paid for many more Ghanaians to gain tertiary level education as intended by the Act. It points out that gifted but needy students ended up borrowing from the Students' Loan Scheme or elsewhere, while officials who are highly placed in society took the scholarships not even for the awards, but for themselves. A former administrator of the Secretariat responded to the Auditor General's claim, saying, quote, "His quest to obtain value for money led him to take the interests of the country into consideration in all decisions made." The Auditor General concludes by saying it intends to serve the GetFund with a notice of intention to disallow items of expenditure and may proceed to surcharge.
That was a news desk report. Now, officials of the Education Ministry and many others defending the award of these scholarships to the politicians make reference to the GetFund Act. Well, the Education Ministry says it will take a second look at the Auditor General's report and re-examine the mode of administration of these scholarships to ensure it is in consonance with what the law states going forward. So what reforms are required to ensure that the scholarships are going to those really in need and those for the right purpose? First, though, what did Audit Service find to help us improve? Joining us live is Alberta Owo. She's a Principal Auditor with the Ghana Audit Service. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us. We'll also go over to Parliament, where we have the Member of Parliament for Notong, Okujetua Blakwa, who's also former Deputy Education Minister. Sir, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. I think that we've just lost the Audit Service representative, so I'll just go straight ahead and start with you, Mr. Okujetua Blakwa. Your reaction, initial reaction.
An embarrassing audit report, unconscionable, a sad day for public office. It's not the kind of audit report that gives public office a good name. And we have to be honest about that, especially on this day, the 24th of February, where we commemorate Ghana's Day of Shame, the overthrow of a selfless, sacrificial leader, the Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Osajifo Kwame Nkrumah taught us to be selfless, to be sacrificial. Up to now, not a single property has been linked to Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, despite the enormous power and how long he stayed in power.
Right.
He dedicated his entire life to transforming our country. So on a day like this, we should be really ashamed about this report. Now, if you look at the GetFund Act, the Ghana Education Trust Fund Act 2000, Act 581, Section 22B is very clear as to how scholarships should be administered. There are 3 criteria. 1, the beneficiaries ought to be gifted and needy. 2, the beneficiaries must be attending school in Ghana, either second cycle or tertiary institutions in Ghana. And then the 3rd criteria, which must be emphasized, is that the scholarships ought to be administered by the Scholarship Secretariat and not GetFund. So if you look at Section 2B of Act 581, all of the provisions have been breached. I have heard the Communications Director at the Ministry of Education seek to justify the scholarships that have been awarded under Section
Just a quick one, Mr. Kudeta Black,
now,
Section
22E, which gives discretion to GetFund. It is important.
I just wanted to come in here because...
I can conclude. It is important to emphasize that Section 22E, So Section 22E, which there's an attempt to justify what has happened. If you read Section 22E carefully, it says that though the GetFund can carry out other programs in the interest of education generally in Ghana, it requires ministerial approval and the approval of the GetFund board. I served at the Ministry of Education for 4 years. There was no ministerial approval for the scholarships that I'm seeing, the names that have been published. And so it is important for us to commend the Auditor General for what they have done. I will support surcharging all of those public officials, MPs, ministers of state who continue to benefit even now as we speak, because remember that the audit report is from 2012 to 2018. They ought to be surcharged and they must refund those monies to the state. It's totally unconscionable. It's morally reprehensible. It cannot be justified whatsoever.
So I come back to you. I wanted to come in there because you had mentioned specifically the law and what it says, and then because there was a response from, well, a document that's purported to be coming from the GetFund. So I wanted to read that to you. It says concerning the part of the law you have quoted, which said the education should be outside of Ghana, that the attention of, it says the attention of the GetFund has been drawn to some media reportage, and it goes on and on. It mentions the name. Then it says, we wish to categorically state that the award of scholarship by GetFund under the GetFund Act 2000, Act 581, is not limited to needy but brilliant students. It says that the fund may, per its mandate, also provide support to such other educational activities and programs to serve strategic national interests. The above having been said, it is worthy of note that the aforementioned persons have not been awarded scholarships by the fund under the current administration. So this is a response sort of from the Ghana Education Trust Fund. Essentially what it's saying is that 2 things from what you've said. The first one being that the GetFund can choose to support educational program or programs or people who are studying not just within Ghana but also outside Ghana. It also goes on to say that these persons that you've mentioned, none of them had their scholarship given in this or under this regime. It probably was the time when you were deputy minister. Your response?
There are many factual inaccuracies with this GetFund statement. First of all, Section 22E of Act 581, the statement refuses to quote the provision in full. Let's read the provision in full. It stipulates to provide monies to support such other educational activities and programs for the promotion of education as the minister in consultation with the board may determine. If you go to the interpretation section of this act, the minister is the Minister of Education. I have checked. I was at the ministry. I was in charge of tertiary education. At no point did these requests come to us for approval. So the Minister of Education ought to have approved this. These approvals have not been granted. The second point that has to be made, and which is the other factual inaccuracy, is the claim that nobody under the current administration has received scholarships in terms of high-ranking public officials. The Honorable Adjosafo scholarship is under this administration. You have the Honorable Mavis, the Honorable Mavis in Kansa Bwedu. Her scholarship was under this administration. You take the Honorable Minister responsible for Employment and Labor Relations. It was under this administration. But you see, I don't want us to begin to engage in extreme partisanship and then the principles are lost. The fundamental principle, which I have been espousing right from the beginning of this discussion, is that at no point should members of parliament qualify for this scholarship, whether home or abroad. It's unconscionable, it's unacceptable. Ministers of state, look, these are scholarships for the poor masses. We should be working to create more opportunities because these scholarships are woefully inadequate. Look, I served at the Ministry of Education. I can tell you that every year, less than 10% of those who apply for these scholarships get it. Less than 10% because the resources are not adequate. And there's so many deserving, gifted and needy students who can't get it because, as you notice from the audit report, even there were budget overruns by 200%, 300%. It tells you that the allocations were not enough. So we should not encourage a situation where people in high office, who should rather create more opportunities for the poor, for the masses, rather come and scramble with them. I would have thought that members of parliament would rather be helping, leading the way so that their constituents, their poor folks they represent in parliament will get these opportunities and not be taking it themselves. So the principle must be established that, look, all members of parliament, ministers of state, you must stay away. And those who have gone to benefit should be thinking about refunding those fees and those living expenses. It's totally wrong. It's unethical. It's morally reprehensible.
You indicated
even if they want to argue that there is no breach of the law, does it sit well with them?
You indicated earlier, Mr. Kujatu Ablakwa, that there was no such approval given by the minister when you were deputy minister concerning these names, these notable names that have come up. How is that possible that they will still get the scholarship if there was no approval?
What it does mean is that the GetFund decided to grant final approval, and the GetFund virtually did everything on their own, and that's why I take issue with how these whole scholarships were granted. In the first place, that should not have really been the mainstay of GetFund. A lot of the scholarships that they did, I agree with the Auditor General, Section 22B of the law is very clear. The Scholarship Secretariat should have been administering that. So it's clear that the GetFund administration will have some questions to answer. I mean, in this country, we should learn to give people who have been given public office to hold the opportunity to answer for their stewardship directly. Let it not be said that the party or ministers are required to provide answers for people who acted as administrators or chief executives for the GetFund. I think that all those who worked at GetFund from 2012 to 2018 should be answering for their stewardship. How come they took final decisions on these matters without recourse to the Minister of Education? I do not know if even the board of the GetFund was requested to approve these scholarship claims as the law requires of all of us to abide by.
And probably my final two questions will be that what you said brings to bear the administrative lapses which the Auditor General seems to raise in this report that he's put out. So he talks about the fact that the GetFund itself should not ideally be administering these funds. These funds should go to the scholarship secretariat. You were there. Did you know if there existed any sort of relationship or collaboration between the GetFund and the scholarship secretariat to ensure that this is done? There could have been some sort of understanding between these organizations. Was there? Do you know of any?
I do know that there were many instances where the scholarship secretariat was allowed room, as the law allows them, to administer scholarships. I recall even new scholarships, for example, the one with Hungary, which I personally negotiated and secured for the Republic of Ghana, where every year 50 tertiary students are flown outside on full scholarship at the expense of the Hungarian government to carry out or pursue all kinds of programs, particularly in the sciences. We ensure that the scholarship secretariat manages that Hungarian scholarship scheme, and I'm aware of other ones, like the ones we negotiated with China, the ones with Colombia, France, and others. The scholarship secretariat fully handles those ones. In terms of specific collaborations, it is clear from the performance audit that the collaboration that we had thought existed was not as strong as it should have been, and that clearly there have been some oversight, which, as I continue to insist, we must give GetFund the opportunity to be heard in this matter. They will have to explain what reasons there are why they decided to administer these scholarship directly instead of transferring the funds to the scholarship secretariat to administer, because they have the expertise. They have been doing this for decades. They have the panel that interviews, that can even, they have the criteria to even determine who is gifted or talented or brilliant but needy. So I mean, these questions will have to be answered. It's just like the the student loan trust. GetFund transfers money to the student loan trust, and the student loan trust secretariat administers the student loans to students. That is the kind of relationship that should exist, that the law requires of those who manage the GetFund secretariat. And so I think that there are legitimate questions that are being raised, and I would like to see what the GetFund administrators and all those who served the GetFund secretariat will have to say in response to these important audit findings that have come up.
My final question, Mr. Kojo-Tablakwa, will be going forward. What do we do going forward? Now, you've mentioned the issue about the budget overruns. Now, it says the account, I had written it, the amount somewhere here, says that it ran into excess of about 400 million was spent in excess. So if you don't have the money, how do you even spend it? I'm not very educated in that. Maybe you can help us. But also, how then do we address these administrative lapses that this report seems to identify at the GetFund and at the ministerial, at the representative level? I mean, as MPs, what could be done from that level?
As members of parliament, fortunately, if you look at the Constitution of Ghana, this audit report will be presented to us formally, and the Public Account Committee will sit on this report. They will invite all of those who have been mentioned to appear before the Public Accounts Committee. Unfortunately, in Ghana, the proceedings of the Public Account Committee are public, and so the days ahead will be interesting from the perspective of Parliament. When the Public Account Committee report is compiled, it will be presented to Parliament, and the plenary will discuss the report. But moving forward, we need major overhauls. First of all, it should not be permissible for public officers, MPs, ministers, and beyond a certain directors in the public service, from director level to chief director, you should not qualify for this government. Government scholarships are not enough. All of those who occupy high public office should be interested in creating more opportunities, rather, for the poor masses of our country, instead of scrambling with them to grab the few opportunities that we have. Two, we must make sure that the law is followed to the letter. The GetFund Act is very clear, and I'm glad that, look, GetFund is a product of the student movement. I used to be NUC's president, and we said that, look, GetFund should supplement education, especially infrastructure. And if we avoid this mission creep, GetFund now is focusing too much on scholarships. That's not what the GetFund was established to do. So let's follow the law. GetFund should stay with its main core mandate. And then if there's a need for scholarships, let us transfer the funds to the scholarship secretariat. And it should be, in terms of ratio, I don't think it should even be up to 10% of the total allocation to the GetFund. And then finally, this point must be emphasized, that the GetFund, we must insist that their annual reports to Parliament, their annual reports to the Ministry of Education, and everything they do. You see, in this country, some agencies have assumed a lot of power and authority they don't have. And you see that all over, Cocoa Board, National Health Insurance Authority, so many other places. They should respect the law, be accountable to the Minister of Education, to the board that governs their operations, and to Parliament. I don't recall the last time all these institutions presented their annual reports to Parliament. If they had been doing that, we will have at least detected these anomalies and stopped them. So I say that, look, this report is a total shame. Those who are in public office should stay away, those who are privileged. And there are more. You see even children of ministers. I saw one cabinet minister's daughter receiving $52,000 a year. That if you look at how much that money, it's a 4-year program, multiply it, how many poor children it can serve, especially if they were schooling in Ghana. I'm sure there's a reason why in the law we said that we should prioritize, GetFund should prioritize scholarships in Ghana. Right. Because fees in Ghana are way, way lower, more affordable, cheaper than fees outside. And then we must also ask GetFund to prioritize. Look, if you look at some of the courses that all these privileged people have gone outside to do, there are courses that could have been done in Ghana. There's nothing special about those courses. And even our national strategic development, where we want to go to, why can't we ensure that scholarships, and we always told GetFund when we were the ministry that prioritize science and maths and look at programs that are not offered in Ghana or where we have very acute shortage. Look, for example, specialists, neurologists, engineers, areas that we need more people and we need to train human resource in those areas. Those are the things you should prioritize.
If I will come in here,
privileged people outside to go and.
If I could just come in there, because you mentioned the things that you did when you were at that ministry. Let's look quickly at 2012, between 2012 and 2016, which is when you were in power. And I said that was my last question, but let me just quickly throw this back in. How do you explain, because according to the Auditor General's report, the practice which the Auditor General says is illegal of taking over, the GetFund taking over the work of the Scholarship Secretariat in terms of disbursing the scholarship amount started in 2012. 2012 and 2016, which are both included in this report, is when you were there as Deputy Minister. How do you explain how this illegality happened under your watch?
As I've told you, the GetFund operated largely independently, and I think that with the benefit of hindsight, we allowed them to arrogate too much power and authority, and did not carry out the oversight that we needed to carry out. And remember that a lot of these things, if they don't report, that's why you have the inherent checks and balances. For example, how will I know as Deputy Minister of Education that an MP has received a scholarship? If GetFund does not tell me, if GetFund does not write to the ministry seeking approval, as the law expects them to do, Section 22E, there's no way we would know.
But then you have oversight responsibilities as Deputy Minister or as a ministry.
We are the Ministry of Education. We are not in charge. We are not in charge of the day-to-day administration of GetFund. So we wouldn't know if you don't request approvals, you don't submit your reports to us. We wouldn't know what you are doing. I wouldn't know that NAPO has come to the GetFund office and has asked for scholarship and has been given. I wouldn't know. I don't work at the ministry, or sorry, at the GetFund Secretariat. So it's a legitimate concern. I think that with hindsight, if we knew that this was what was going on, with hindsight, we will have been more, will have been more probing, and will have asked the right questions and demanded that we get a full brief of exactly what was transpiring. But these things become clearer always after the fact and after an audit. And that's why we have the Ghana Audit Service. And in our constitution, everybody's stewardship, everybody's tenure will be audited. And then these things, these matters are unearthed. So what matters really now is that going forward, how do we address these infractions, and how do we make sure that they do not recur? I would focus on that.
Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa, thank you so much for your time and for your patience. Okudzeto Ablakwa is Member of Parliament for North Tongue. There he's joining us via live, where he's telling us his own view of what has happened. Thank you very much once again. Let's go to the Ghana Audit Service. As I indicated, Abeta O is Principal Auditor. She was supposed to join us earlier, but we lost her briefly. She's back on the line. Hello, Ms. Owo. Thank you so much for your time. I'd just like to find out from you quickly as we start what necessitated this performance audit that your office did.
Numerous calls of students facing hardships in foreign countries while studying, and it was after we found that the Scholarship Secretariat, initially being the institution that was supposed to administer scholarships in Ghana, that role had been taken over by GetFund, and during GetFund's administration, students were in need and had to face various hardships in foreign countries. So that was what necessitated the audit.
So if for someone who has not really followed the discussion and they just had an idea, would you please tell us what the real lapses you found are? These administrative lapses that seem to be standing out really tall in your report. Rob, if you will summarize it for us, please. Okay,
so the purpose of the audit was to find out whether GetFund acted in accordance with its mandate, as stated in the GetFund Act, in administering the scholarship. So as the GetFund Act by Section 22B said, GetFund was supposed to provide funding to Scholarship Secretariat to fund scholarships. But since GetFund took over it, we were expecting that they would put in the policies, procedures, and administration principles to ensure that they administered the scholarships with due regard to efficiency and then effectiveness. So what we found was that the GetFund first did not use the fund in accordance with the object of the Act. So instead of funding students who were schooling in Ghana, majority of the funds went into foreign scholarships. And also, the administration didn't have sound principles. When we say sound principles, what we found was that we're expecting that as a scholarship granting institution, they would have the eligibility criteria that shows that how does somebody qualify to get a scholarship, whether they would have a scholarship administration process. That is, when we're going to publicize the scholarship, there's going to be an opening season and then a deadline for presentation of scholarship. There's going to be a selection criteria and then also an approval process. So we found that GetFund didn't have all these in place to grant the scholarship. And also, GetFund exceeded the allocation for scholarship, meaning that they had yearly budget that was approved by Parliament. But over the period, that was 2012 to 2018, what we found was that GetFund exceeded its budget by about 150%. And then as a result of the number of scholarships granted, which was over the funds they had, students were caught in hardship. People had to be evicted from their accommodation. Schools were rejecting students from writing exams, all because they didn't have funds to pay their fees.
Okay.
And also, the selection process was porous, which meant that there was supposed GetFund claimed they inherited documentation for scholarship secretariat, which showed them how to administer the scholarship. But what we found was that they didn't follow through the documents inherited. So the students were not, the beneficiaries were not providing all the supporting documents to be granted scholarships. So people were applying without their certificate. People were applying without the transcripts and all that. And also the administering of scholarships benefited people who were not qualified. So the needy but brilliant students that was specified in the GetFund Act were rather not getting the scholarship. So generally, that is what the report was about.
Because we've run out of time, but let's quickly touch on the actions that the Audit Service has taken in relation to the infractions that you have found so far. But because you mentioned the GetFund, the administration of the GetFund, the scholarship that should be within Ghana. This GetFund has a statement. Quickly, I'll just read to you. Actually, it says that we wish to categorically state that the award of scholarship by GetFund under the GetFund Act 2000 Act 581 is not limited to needy but brilliant students. The fund, per its mandate, also provides support for such other educational activities and programs to serve strategic national interests. Does that not suffice for the actions that the administration took?
There's something missing there. It was on approval of the board. So we went through the board minutes and we didn't see any approval for GetFund to use the section, the 22E.
Okay. Let's then finish up with the actions. What is going to happen next? What are the next steps that the Ghana Audit Service is taking on this matter?
The next step is the report has been presented to the Speaker of Parliament. The Public Account Committee is going to sit on the report, and then there's going to be the public hearing on the report. Okay.
And quickly, does the part of the mandate of the Ghana Audit Service include preventive education of sorts to some of these institutions? Perhaps that could have prevented this from happening in the first place. Does that exist?
Yes, we make recommendations after our audit, and we have recommendations in this report, which GetFund is supposed to implement. And then after a time, we'll go back to do a follow-up audit, and we'll see how GetFund has implemented these recommendations and how it has changed the system.
Thank you very much for your time, ma'am. Alberta Owo is Principal Auditor with the Ghana Audit Service. Well, following this expose, many of those listed have been reacting. We can start with Mr. Opoku Prempeh, who has been explaining how he became a beneficiary. He spoke on Adom TV.
Free in Fisher, in Pimienu, and you do swap, and I do don't call for the year minister. And holiday club in Tivinia and out Munun Twasso, and quite acquire a master's degree or a PhD or a Bissau. Now, I have no Lucrebian. Me better by a name son and other name of Ministry of Education. Men call Miami, Nova Kwame Fesso, GetFund, Uncle G. Sikase, with the call school Akusiadi, and Yanukre, Mako school a year. Me ya Benjuma, men coaches at the BM free GetFund in mind. Nandukre will be say, if you pay me new edit to Naya Bemu, a war parliament. Parliament in your invitation free Harvard, see Monsieur Adi, now Chimian son. Permission of Parliament, get fund the sponsor in Yemen. Now, so the mechano, Usha dear, Usha numbers, you create their bear, ye be a free near Truby. You see us and no son what Yadepa, and yet to create 2014 accept I own character in our home. Then one was say, maybe accept the freedom. The bar it never seemed to be actually a free 2017 Minkoji GetFund Sika. I'm the Minister of Education, Diako Babia. Ebume Lucre, so 2014, no, Mashabijum, Harvard, Tunis, Friends, in Pisca, the Miss Yadina, or Chimiansa, and my GetFund sponsor. And Yemen Quantum Coy, na Sabi, when you uncanny Muntin can Bubu be BD and Kahun. The B are Nisika free GetFund, the BG Free National Health Insurance Fund, the being a Kuchini, Union Scandal Coy, and Yemen Quantum Coy, and Yemen Quantum Makubida, MP4 Bibrico, Oboka, Obu Srisika, Babia, Ofusu Benjamin, Numdiako. So they make an if we try to track your crack and just a crack and first cash so will be night trust at 12,000. Now, what you mean, so be a basis in the same name, a buying. GetFund who took on our rate or demand. She saying you must now buy bit the amount now to me 12,000. A woman could school of it. Cry be a 12,000. And then me, what about me 12,000? And you're no clear.
Voice of the Minister for Education. Well, Kennedy Osenyako was also included in the list as having studied at the SOAS University of London. He denies the claim.
If it indeed is an official, authentic document coming from the Auditor General, then it will be unfortunate because there's no figure attached to my name. And why did the Auditor General put my name there? The Auditor General could have even gone further to investigate it and find out why my name was there. I have not been on any government scholarship, whether home or abroad.
But have you at any point in time even requested and you were denied?
Most of my constituents comes to get the GetFund scholarship for them. So what I do is I mostly use my letterhead to write and attach their request or their school or whatever, whether admission letter or whatever it is on my letterhead on their behalf and send it to the administrator to see if they can help them. That is the closest that I've gotten to by writing for my constituents in front of my name. Then I am tempted to believe that it is maybe because of some of those letters that I've written on behalf of my constituents for such a scholarship support to go and pursue their education, some outside and some locally. Maybe that is why they might have written my